The room was silent. Isabella sat on the leather couch holding a cup of tea. Her eyes were fixed on a framed photo above the fireplace, her and her father, smiling during a sunny afternoon in the garden of the old family mansion. That memory, so distant and joyful, now felt cruelly out of reach. He was gone, and with him, a part of her. A short while later, Alexander entered the room, carrying an air of fake concern that Isabella was beginning to notice. He approached slowly, gently touching her shoulder. "Isa, love, I know this is hard for you. Losing a father isn't something easy to get over, especially with so many responsibilities piling up so suddenly," he said, pausing to gauge her reaction. "But at least he left you something to help you move forward. Don't forget that." Isabella looked up, puzzled by his choice of words. Something to help you move forward. That wasn't how she saw her father's inheritance. To her, it wasn't just money. It was the result of years of hard work and love for their family. "He didn't leave me money, Alexander. He left me a piece of himself, a piece of my family's history," she replied softly. Alexander sighed and sat down next to her, trying to appear understanding. Of course I get it. It's just that now with this fortune, you need to think about how to take care of it. And honestly, Isa, I'm not sure you should handle all of this on your own." She frowned, feeling a slight discomfort. "I'm not alone. I have Henry, the family lawyer, and—" Alexander interrupted her with an almost paternal smile. "Henry is good, but he's an employee, Isa. What I mean is, someone who really cares about you, someone who knows what's best for the both of us as a couple." Those words sounded like an alarm in Isabella's mind. She looked at her husband, trying to decipher what lay behind his seemingly caring eyes. It was as if every syllable leaving his mouth carried a hidden weight, an intention she couldn't yet name. That night, as she tried to sleep, Alexander's words echoed in her mind. He seemed to be pushing an idea, as if trying to convince her of something she didn't yet fully understand. The discomfort turned into doubt, and the doubt began to transform into distrust. In the morning, Alexander brought her breakfast in bed, a gesture he rarely made. "I thought I'd pamper you a little today," he said with a broad, almost theatrical smile. "You deserve to relax after everything." Isabella took the cup, but she couldn't relax in the face of his sudden kindness. On the contrary, it only made her more suspicious. "You're being very attentive, Alex. Of course I appreciate it, but is everything okay?" she asked, trying to sound casual, though her voice carried a hint of caution. He laughed, a laugh that felt rehearsed. "Of course everything's fine. I'm just thinking about our future, Isa. The future we can build together now, using this inheritance as a foundation." "This inheritance isn't a plan for our future, Alex. It's my father's legacy," she replied, her tone now sharper. Alexander's smile faltered briefly before he quickly regained it. Of course. That's not what I meant. I just think, with so much money, you'll need someone to help you make the right decisions." Isabella set the cup down on the nightstand and looked at him intently. Something was off, and she knew it. Alexander had never been this persistent about helping, and this help seemed to come with its own agenda. The morning sun streamed through the large living room window, bathing the space in golden light. Isabella sat at the table, reviewing documents from the lawyer that detailed the assets she had inherited from her father. On the other side of the table, Alexander approached with calculated steps. "Love, you're overloading yourself," he began in a gentle tone. "Don't you think it would be easier to delegate some of these responsibilities? After all, this isn't something you were expecting. Remember, I'm here and I can help." Isabella looked up from the papers, staring at him. "I know I wasn't expecting this, but that doesn't mean I'm not capable of handling it, Alex." He pulled out a chair, sitting very close to her, almost invading her personal space. "Of course you're capable, Isa. No one's saying otherwise. I just think sometimes it's good to have someone to share the burden, someone who can make tough decisions so you don't have to wear yourself out." She pressed her lips together, thinking, "And who do you think I should share this responsibility with?" she asked directly, crossing her arms. Alexander paused, as if carefully choosing his next words. "With me? I mean, we're a team, aren't we? What's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. That's how marriage works, right?" That statement hung in the air for a few seconds. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. There was a persistence in his voice. She averted her gaze, returning to the papers, trying to ignore the weight of that conversation. "It's not that I don't trust you, Alex, but this is complicated. It's my father's legacy. I don't want to make any impulsive decisions and regret them later." Alexander let out a small laugh, a sound as artificial as his smile. "Impulsive? Isa, we've been married for years. I know you better than anyone. I just want what's best for both of us. This money, this inheritance, it could be a test, you know, an opportunity to show that we're strong together. But for that, you need to let go a little too." Isabella quickly raised her head. "A test? What exactly does that mean?" He hesitated for a moment before leaning forward and placing his hand on hers. "I mean, this could bring us even closer. You trust me with this, and I show you that I'm worthy of your trust. Don't you think that's important?" She pulled her hand back, disguising the gesture as if she were adjusting the papers, but inside, her heart was racing. Something was off. Alexander had never talked about tests in their marriage before. "Alex, this isn't about trust. It's about thinking about what my father would have wanted. I don't think he ever imagined you'd be this interested in handling it." Alexander's expression hardened briefly, but he quickly switched back to his conciliatory tone. "Isa, you're misunderstanding me. It's not interest, it's concern. I just want to make sure no one takes advantage of you or this situation." Isabella's stomach churned. She realized he was trying to manipulate the conversation, twisting it to make her feel like she was the one in the wrong. "And why do you think someone would take advantage of me?" she asked, her tone challenging as she looked him in the eyes. He forced a smile. "Because you're too good. You trust people too easily, and I just want to be the one person you can trust above all else." Isabella remained silent, watching Alexander closely. For the first time, she started to wonder, what if he was the one she needed to protect herself from? Later that night, driven by a growing unease, Isabella decided to investigate. While Alexander slept soundly in the bedroom, she tiptoed downstairs, holding the phone he had left behind in the living room. It wasn't like her to invade someone's privacy, but something about their recent conversations had put her on high alert. Her heart pounded faster with every tap as she unlocked the device. In the email section, she found something that made her stop breathing for a few seconds. Notifications from unknown banks, overdue payments, and legal threats. There were statements showing exorbitant debts, far beyond what a man in Alexander's position should have. But what shocked her the most was a loan contract with loan sharks that listed her future inheritance as part of the collateral. In that moment, she realized just how serious the situation was. "He's trying to steal from me," she murmured to herself, feeling the anger and betrayal burn in her chest. The next day, Isabella sat in the living room with the printed documents in front of her, waiting for Alexander to join her for lunch. He appeared relaxed, as though nothing could shake the control he believed he had over the situation. "Good afternoon, my love. Did you sleep well?" he asked, pouring himself a glass of water. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she slid the papers across the table toward him. "Care to explain this, Alexander?" He glanced at the documents, and his expression shifted instantly from calm to panic. For a moment, he seemed to hesitate, but then he assumed a defensive stance. "Where did you get this? Have you been going through my things?" Isabella crossed her arms, her eyes blazing with indignation. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you've been hiding massive debts from me, Alexander, and worse, you used my father's inheritance as collateral. That is unforgivable." He slammed the papers down on the table and began pacing, his posture tense and aggressive. "I did this for us, for our family, but you don't understand how things work. I need money to maintain our lifestyle, to protect what we have." She stood up, facing him head-on. "Don't you dare frame this as something for us. These debts are yours. Your bad choices. And you thought you could use my money to bail yourself out." The tension in the room was suffocating. Alexander took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. "You're overreacting, Isabella. This impulsive attitude could ruin everything. Look, we can fix this together, but if you keep up this paranoia, maybe divorce is the best solution." His words hit Isabella like a slap. She saw the threat in his eyes. This was a man cornered, trying to turn the tables in his favor at any cost. "A divorce," she repeated, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "You think you can intimidate me with that? Go ahead, Alex, because the only thing you'll achieve is losing even more. Let me make one thing clear. You won't get a single cent of this inheritance." His eyes narrowed, realizing his manipulation wasn't working. "Be careful what you say, Isabella. You have no idea how cruel the world can be to a woman on her own without support." She took a step back, not in retreat, but to create emotional distance. "Maybe it is cruel, but I'd rather face that than stay married to a manipulative liar like you. Now get out of this house." As Alexander stormed out, slamming the door behind him, Isabella picked up her phone and called Henry, her family's longtime attorney. "Henry, I need your help. I've discovered something about Alexander, something that could destroy his plans, but I need to act fast. On the other end of the line, Henry's steady voice brought Isabella immediate relief. I'm at your disposal, Isabella. Let's handle this the right way. Meet me at my office in an hour so we can discuss everything. All right, I'll be there, she replied. She hung up the phone, feeling a surge of determination rise within her. Alexander had shown his true colors, but now it was her turn to act, and she wasn't about to lose. When they met, Henry carefully guided her on what steps to take and what they'd need to ensure they won the case. A few days after the meeting with Henry, the courtroom was packed that morning. Murmurs filled the air as family members and onlookers settled in to witness what promised to be a scandal of epic proportions. Isabella sat in the front row, her face calm but her eyes burning with resolve. Beside her, Henry meticulously arranged the documents, exuding the confidence of someone ready to strike a decisive blow. At the other end of the room, Alexander sat with a confident posture, though a sharp observer could notice the sheen of sweat on his forehead. He shot Isabella a disdainful glance, as if he still believed he could come out on top. When the judge entered, the room fell silent. After the formalities, Henry was the first to rise. Your Honor, today we will present irrefutable evidence that Mr. Alexander Martinez not only attempted to financially manipulate his wife, Isabella Martinez, but also concealed illegal debts that now jeopardize the inheritance she received from her late father. Alexander rolled his eyes, leaning toward his lawyer. They're bluffing, he muttered, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. But Alexander wasn't ready for what came next. Henry handed the judge a detailed dossier. As you can see, here are the contracts signed by Mr. Martinez. These documents clearly show his attempts to use Mrs. Martinez's inheritance as collateral for high-value loans obtained from loan sharks. Additionally, we have emails exchanged between him and his creditors, which prove he intended to hide this from his wife until he gained access to the funds. The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. All eyes turned to Alexander, whose air of confidence was beginning to crack. He abruptly stood up, trying to defend himself. "This is outrageous," he shouted, struggling to maintain control. "Those documents could be forged. Isabella, do you really believe this nonsense?" Isabella didn't respond immediately. She stood up slowly, walking toward the center of the courtroom. Her steps were steady, each one deliberate. When she finally spoke, her voice was strong and unwavering. "I believe the evidence, Alexander. I believe the facts. And more than anything, I believe in myself, something you tried to destroy with your lies and manipulations." He laughed nervously, desperately trying to turn the situation in his favor. "This is a setup. You're trying to ruin me. Everything I did for us." Isabella looked at him, her gaze steady and unyielding. "No, Alexander, you did this for yourself, because you never understood what it means to be a partner. For you, it's always been about control, power, and money." The judge intervened, calling for silence in the courtroom, but the pivotal moment was yet to come. Henry called a surprise witness to the stand, one of Alexander's creditors. The man, visibly nervous, confirmed every accusation. "Mr. Martinez assured me he'd have access to his wife's inheritance. He said she'd never find out," the man confessed, as Alexander slouched even further in his chair. When the testimony ended, Isabella rose once again. She turned to the audience, but her words were directed at Alexander. "You thought I was weak, that you could manipulate me to fix your mistakes. But the weakness was yours, Alexander. Your greed and desperation destroyed everything you had." The judge announced that the case would be referred for criminal investigation, and Alexander would be charged with fraud. Isabella gave one final glance at the man who had once sworn to love her, but had only betrayed her. As he was escorted out under the weight of accusatory stares, Isabella stood tall, feeling for the first time in months the sweet taste of freedom and justice. She hadn't just won, she had reclaimed her peace. The sun shone gently on the horizon as Isabella strolled through the sprawling garden of the estate that was now her responsibility. Every flower, every tree seemed to hold memories of her father, as if the land around her whispered stories of his unconditional love and hard work. With the court proceedings finally behind her and Alexander out of her life, she felt she could breathe again. That morning, Isabella gathered the team who worked on the property. They met in the grand hall, most of them anxious about what the future would bring. She stood before them, taking in the weight of her responsibility, but also savoring the freedom to forge her own path. "I know the past few months have been chaotic for all of us," she began, her voice full of emotion. "But I want you to know that this house, this legacy isn't just mine, it's ours. My father always believed that the people around us make all the difference, and that's the principle I intend to honor moving forward. Henry, standing beside her, smiled, proud of the strength Isabella was showing. After the meeting, he accompanied her to the mansion's library, where they had spent countless hours planning her next steps. "You're ready for this, Isa," Henry said, watching as she adjusted an old book that had belonged to her father, not just to take care of what he left behind, but to build something new, something that's truly yours. Isabella sighed, but her eyes sparkled with determination. "For so long I let others decide who I should be or what I should do. Alexander, society's expectations, even fear. But now, all of that is over." Henry nodded, though his expression turned serious for a moment. "I just want you to know, if you ever need help with anything, I'm here." She smiled at him, the most genuine smile she had given in months. "I know, Henry, you've been one of the few people who truly stood by my side, and that means more to me than you'll ever know." Later, Isabella went to her father's office. There she found a letter he had written to her before he passed away. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. The letter was brief but filled with meaning. "My dearest Isabella, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to protect you. But my daughter, you've always been strong and determined. Use that strength. Remember, your happiness should never depend on anyone but yourself. Always trust your intuition. With eternal love, Dad." Tears streamed down her face as she read those words. He had always believed in her potential, even when she doubted herself. The next day, Isabella made her first major decision. She would transform the mansion, not just into a home, but into a space where she could create something that honored her father's memory. She gathered a team of architects and began planning a cultural center that would celebrate her family's roots and be open to anyone seeking learning and inspiration. When the project was announced, Alexander, now disgraced and living modestly, saw the news in the papers. The photos showed Isabella radiant and confident, holding a microphone as she unveiled her vision for the future. Frustrated, he tossed the newspaper aside, knowing he had lost not only the inheritance, but also the woman he had never appreciated for the incredible strength she truly possessed. At that same moment, Isabella looked up at the sky. "Dad, I hope you're proud. No matter how hard they try to bring me down, I will always rise again." And so, Isabella began a new chapter, free from the chains of manipulation and stronger than she had ever imagined. Years passed, and Isabella's and Alexander's paths never crossed again. Isabella became a respected figure, not just for transforming the mansion into a vibrant cultural center, but for her resilience and determination. She rebuilt her life, surrounded by people who genuinely supported her, all while honoring her father's legacy. Alexander, on the other hand, faded into obscurity. With no resources, living off favors and memories of a life he had destroyed with his own hands, he became a shadow of the arrogant man he once was. For him, the greatest punishment wasn't losing the fortune. It was watching Isabella thrive while he withered away. Isabella never looked back. To her, Alexander was nothing more than a painful but necessary lesson. Her true victory wasn't defeating him, but rediscovering her own strength and independence. This story reminds us that life's greatest battles are often not fought against others, but within ourselves. Isabella faced not only the betrayal of someone she loved, but also her own doubts and fears. By freeing herself from Alexander's manipulations, she realized that true strength doesn't come from what we inherit or possess, but from the courage to rebuild our path, even after we fall. Her journey serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how difficult it may seem, we always have the ability to rise stronger.